Well, hi there. Welcome
Hey,
back to Authors on the Air. I'm James Lattrell, your host, and with us we have Alafair Burke today to talk about her new book, The Note. So, Alafair, how are you doing?
I'm great. Nice to see you.
Good to see you too. Now, The Note, I think, is your 22nd book out. That's just an amazing body of work.
Is it? I stopped to count. I'm like, I think that's right because I count them in
Yeah,
like a little cluster. So I think it's my 15th book by myself, and then I co-authored several
yeah,
books with Mary Higgins Clark before she
right.
passed.
I mean, it's an amazing body of work, and
Thank you.
one of the things I appreciate about especially your books, is the plotting is just so intricate and so layered, and it almost just sneaks up on you. And that's what I found in the note was really kind of fun. Um, why don't you tell people a little bit about what May faces in the note?
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks for having me and thanks for those kind words. I consider that quite a compliment coming from you. So
Oh, thanks.
it's nice. And I love puzzles. So if it feels like a puzzle kind of coming together, then I feel like I've done my job right. So the note is very pretty. Well, the note is about three friends. The main voice is May Hanover, who you mentioned. And she and her two childhood friends kind of moved in and out of each other's lives the way, people you meet when you're a kid do, but they've sort of reunited through this ever-present text thread after they've all kind of gone through some things in their adult lives. And so they are finally getting back together again in real life for the first time in years, and they go out to East Hampton for what's supposed to just be a weekend of kind of some sun and fun and catching up. And they get into a little tiff over a parking spot and they pull a practical joke that unravels into the point where they find themselves in the middle of a police investigation. And then suddenly, when the police are knocking at their door, May is kind of left wondering, like, what did I get myself into with these two friends? Like, maybe we're not great influences on each other. And can I really trust these people? Or am I going to go out on my own?
Yeah, and it's really an interesting concept. It starts off so simple with a prank, and then it just kind of takes off in its own world. Now, without giving too much away about the story, these friends come together, May and her friends, and they're all kind of linked by something in their pasts that maybe isn't the most positive thing that they have going on in their lives, but it kind of sheds a little bit on the kind of a complex nature of relationships and women's relationships in particular. How did you go about putting that together? Because it was really unique.
Yeah, I wanted these three friends to have had a reason to kind of get back together in their adult lives. And I had been, we're writers, we're always making observations, right? And for a while, we all had to live inside, and that was strange, right? We'd see each other online. And you never know if what you're seeing of a person online is them at their very best. Like, is it their perfect curated life, or is it them at their worst? You see these videos of the so-called Karens, like who are, screaming about the strangers and then it goes viral. And I just thought, well, what is that like to be a person who is just living their life and suddenly someone's got a camera in your face and is recording you. And it doesn't give too much about the book I won't tell you what it is, but May has a moment
Mhm.
that gets videotaped, and nobody wants to be judged by the worst moment of their life, right? And it is definitely not the best moment in her life. And it goes viral, and the whole internet's making fun of her, and she's got to pull down her social media accounts. And I just kind of thought about, like, I'm the person who's clicking on that, and I watch it and I text it to my friends. And it's like, you kind of forget, like, this is a real person. Like, someone's at home crying right
Right,
now, like,
right.
and screaming at the top of their lungs, like, you don't know me. And so I wanted to have a character who's gone through that and kind of turned to her friends to see her through it. And it turns out they've all kind of had those moments. And I think the internet is hard on a lot of people, but it can be particularly hard on women. And so that's kind of a theme that runs through the book, of the pressure that these women are under to seem perfect all the time.
Right. And within that, you kind of reveal this layer of secrets that each of the women have, and it kind of even deepens that mystique that each of them are, they're not giving themselves out there completely to even among their little circle of friends.
Yeah, and sometimes they're not even necessarily being honest with themselves, right? If May says a lot of times like fake it till you make it, because she's got imposter syndrome, even though she's obviously a very bright woman. She's a lawyer, but she's just not very confident. But she kind of pretends to be confident. At some point, she's got to admit to herself that she's kind of lying to herself sometimes about her own identity, and this situation that they get put into kind of forces them to be more honest with each other, but also with themselves.
No, that's true. But what is it about secrets, like these women have, that are just so powerful and motivate people to make these decisions that they do? What is it about secrets that are so rich?
Those are my favorite stories. I think when I first started writing, it was much more like the good guys against the bad guys. And I think over time, the stories I really like to read and like to write are ones where you really don't have good guys and bad guys. You just have normal people trying to get through life and trying to get through this thing we call life. And something that starts out small, right? If you don't deal with it, it's just like it can compound from there, right? Somebody makes one little mistake, and then rather taking their lumps for it, they kind of keep digging themselves deeper and deeper and deeper. And so again, it's always so hard to talk about a thriller without giving things away, but not everything's as it seems. Let's just put it that way.
This is true. That's a really good way to say it. Now, I understand that the situation that you start the book off with, three friends or some friends going to a place and putting a note on a car, you might have had some personal inspiration for that.
Yeah, no, it's such an embarrassing story. It's like, something I will confess, I never know if it's the best thing about me or if it's the worst thing about me. I will do anything to make a person laugh. Like, I mean, I just know no boundaries whatsoever. Like, if it's going to get my friend to laugh, I'll do it. And someone stole a parking spot, and it was stupid. And we didn't confront the person at all. It was just like, we were making each other's laugh. Like, what if we did this? What if we did that? Like, vengeance shall be had. And we were writing like stupid notes, like at the restaurant we were at, like, let's leave this note on the car. And then like the waitress was asking us about it. It was stupid. And then like everybody else starts laughing. And I'm like, you should write this note. So instead of a preachy note, like, be nicer, I was like, he's cheating on you. Like, just because, like, what if you came back to your car and got a note saying he's cheating on you? Like, and we left the notes on the table, I swear, and did not leave the note. But later we saw a note on the car, and it was like somebody, it wasn't me, went and left a note on the car, and we're like, we're still not sure which note it was. I don't know. Apologies to that person if it was the really mean one. That's so embarrassing. But I could, me being me, like, I just couldn't stop thinking about it. I'm like, oh my God, like, so we're three grown women, and like that person's going to find a note on their car just because they stole, although it was very obnoxious that they stole the parking spot and then kind of grinned at us. But, and then of course I have to make it dark. I'm like, well, what if we saw on the news that night that something had happened to that person? Like, and then it's that idea of one false move, right? One little mistake can snowball. May starts to want it, because she's normally like a little rule follower. She's a former prosecutor. Her friends tease her and call her the little sheriff because she's such a good girl. And she starts thinking, how did I let these two idiotic friends of mine, get me in the middle of a bad situation? So
yeah, that story is kind of amazing. How often do you get inspiration in moments like that for your books? I mean, that's just kind of unfolded into the note.
Yeah, I mean, you've written so many books, like the ideas come at you kind of sideways sometimes. But, I wrote a book called Dead Connection, which wound up being the beginning of a series. I didn't even mean for it to be, but that was based on someone using internet dating, which was brand new at the time, as a way to find women and victimize them. But I had met my husband on Match.com. And, most people, like, that's a nice romantic story. And of course, I'm like, wow, somebody could use this to do really nefarious things. And, off I go, and I've got a book. I've written books about sisters, and that's always been even though I tell my sisters it's not based on our sisterly relationships, but like those complicated relationships people have, like more and more, I like stories that kind of challenge the confines of relationships. And so with the note, it's very much about these complicated female friendships that I think at one point in the book, one of them says, female friendships are no joke. I mean, they really are. Like, there's a lot,
Yeah, they're complex and they're so intricate, and I think you capture that really well. It's just not this surface kind of relationship that people think of. Now May is a former prosecutor and law professor, and that's kind of your background too. I mean, how did that, not just in this book, but how does that background as a lawyer and a professor help you write your crime fiction novels?
Yeah, I mean, so I worked as a prosecutor for several years before I became an academic, and I worked, I did kind of the traditional DA thing for a few years, but then I was in something called like a neighborhood-based prosecution program where I actually worked out of a police precinct, and half of it was kind of community-based stuff, but half of it was being an advisor, like the in-house advisor to the police. And I think that experience, like I just kind of know the rhythm of a criminal case kind of organically. And it obviously helps me when I'm writing the chapters that are from law enforcement's perspective. But I think it's also given me insight into what it's like to be a person who the police show up at their door, right? That what that feels like from the other side. And, more and more, like in the note, there is a police officer on the page, but most of the book is from the perspective of the people kind of feeling that heat, and then the reader gets the advantage of seeing it from both sides, right? Like they know what the police knows. They also know what May and her friends know. So that's the fun part.
Right. No, and coming from my background, I thought the police angles of it were handled really, really well.
Thank you.
Those interactions I thought were just spot on. So it was really well done. I like that.
Oh, man, thank you.
Now, I'm kind of staying with that same theme as a law professor. What have you learned from your students that you can apply to your crime fiction?
Apparently that I'm terrifying. I'm like, wait, I'm your scary professor. What are the other people doing? You know what? They're the way they consume media and information is so different. I think you and I are probably about the same age.
Yeah.
And if they're watching a series, it's not on the television necessarily. It's more reality based, or it's they're just getting short snippets online. If they read probably less fiction. Like, I mean, they're law students. They don't really have time to read fiction, but to the extent they do, it's almost like singles versus albums, as I call it. Like when we were growing up, you'd listen to the whole album beginning to end and the liner notes and geek out on it. And now it's one-offs. And you see that really with, I think, to television shows, right? It's more limited series. You don't have the long running series as commonly anymore. And with novels, right? You don't necessarily have people who are going to follow one character for a couple decades anymore. They want kind of one digestible, like, page turner, and then it's on to the next, Right. So I think that, and then of course, like, being around students is great because they're just, especially my first year students, they're like still so like excited to be lawyers. I'm like, fill me with the law. So that's exciting.
That would be refreshing to see that. Yeah. Now, we're gonna end with something we call 3 quick hits, and that's, I want to put you in May's headspace, and I'll ask you just 3 quick questions, and you just tell me what she would say. So, what's May's favorite cocktail, or what does she like to drink?
Martinis with olives.
And how about her favorite music? What does May like to listen to?
She likes Foo Fighters and Smashing Pumpkins. She likes like that kind of rock.
Yeah, I get it. And how about, what is May's greatest fear? What does she fear most?
Being exposed for being not as talented as she wants to be, not as smart as she wants to be. Like, she has secret insecurities. Yeah. She doesn't want to fail. She never wants to fail. Yeah, that totally fits. Folks, we've been talking with Alafair Burke, the author of The Note. It comes out on January 7th.
You're going to want to pick this up. It's getting a lot of great buzz. I think yesterday in the Washington Post, there was just a glowing review about just the intricacy of the plot and everything else. I think, people are going to be talking about this book this year, Alafair. So congrats on
Thank you so much.
a wonderful,
Excited.
wonderful book. Yeah.
Thanks for giving me the chance to talk about it.
Are you kidding? It's my pleasure. So where can folks find you out on the road here with the note?
New York City on Monday. I'll be in conversation with the wonderful Megan Abbott at the Upper West Side Barnes and Noble. Then I'll be going to St. Louis, Wichita, Kansas, Houston, Texas, all of the first week of January. And then I'm doing a lot of great virtual events. I know you can go to my website, alafairburke.com, for the full schedule, but I've got a great virtual event with the Massachusetts Library with Scott Turow. So a lot of in conversation things. Sunday night, I'm in the back room with Joe Finder and Rachel Househall, and that'll be great. So lots of virtual events too. So go to my website for the details.
Well, that's fantastic. And Alafair, thanks for spending so much time with us today. We really appreciate it. And again, congratulations on the note.
Thanks so much.
Really well done.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.